So today, while my children are having story time and doing some activities with KIWICO, I'm going to share with you how we came to adopt our little girl, whose name is Lola. Her Chinese name is Lola, and she's sitting right there in the pretty little dress that her little friend gave her and the yellow hairband. So first, I will start with kind of my husband and I's short little story about my husband and I. So we got married a year before we graduated from college. We knew that we wanted to go to China after we graduated, and our missions organization told us that you have to be married at least a year before you can go on the mission field. So we got married a year before we graduated college, and then a month after we graduated, we moved to China. So we were newly married and newly graduated from college, and we didn't want to have children of our own. We knew that going into the marriage. So, sorry for my so's. We just had a wonderful 5 years of marriage, 5 or 6 years of marriage before we decided to have children. And when I was about 27, 28, we decided to look into adoption. As some of you may know, you have to be 30 to adopt in China, or any other international adoption. And so we were like, okay, well, we can look into it and maybe we can start the process and be ready to receive a child by the time I come of age. My husband was already 30 at that time. He's a couple years older than me. And so we looked into it and figured out that you had to have a fair amount of assets, or if you didn't have assets, you had to have a certain amount of money as kind of like maybe an investment. And so we prayed about it, and we were like, well, we felt like God was closing the doors for adoption at that time. So we decided to have children of our own, which was, believe it or not, it was hard for me at first, but now I am so happy. I love all my children. But we had our firstborn, Keely, who is reading the book to the others right now. And then a year and a half later, when my son was 6 months old, we decided to try to look into it again. At that time, we found an organization that we called, and they said, well, we can work with you. Tell us a little bit about your story. We told them our story. We said, we've been living in China for the past 6 years. We have no assets in the States, nothing. And they're like, well, we can work with you. So you can either get a family member to loan you some money, and you pay them back when you can, or you can get a family member to put some property in your name and then take your name off of it when the whole adoption process is done. Whatever you can do to get those assets. Once you get those assets, we'll work with you. So right after the phone call, we waited till, of course, a good time in the States to call my parents and my husband's parents, and we shared what we had discovered, and they all knew that we wanted to adopt and that we weren't gonna give up on that, even though we had 2 children of our own. And so we talked to them, and we worked out a deal with them, and So couple weeks later, we called the adoption agency back and talked to the same lady, and we're like, we're ready. We have some things set aside, and we have those assets now. And so she's like, okay, well, you can fill out our application. So she emailed it to us. We filled out the application, and then she gave us access to their Facebook page where we could look at children from China. And if we wanted to look at children from other countries, we could have. But we always knew we wanted to adopt from China, and it would make it a lot easier, especially because we were living there. So we looked through the Facebook page and we saw Lola, and we just fell in love with her. There was just something about her, even though it was just a picture and a description of her, we just fell in love with her. And so we emailed the organization, and we're like, we would really like to start the process towards adopting Lola. And we're like, well, somebody else is actually thinking about adopting her. So right now she is, I forget what they called it, but basically under review by a different family. And we're like, okay, thanks. And so we just prayed about it, and we asked God, hey, we don't want anything bad to happen to anybody, but if you want this little girl to be available to us, we'll wait on your timing. And a month later, she showed back up on the Facebook page, and we immediately emailed the organization. We're like, we saw Lola's back up on the Facebook page. Is she available? And they're like, yes, the family had something come up, and they aren't going to be able to adopt at this time, or if ever. And we're like, oh, okay, what can we do? We really want to adopt her. It's like, well, do you want to fill out the paperwork and write a nurture letter, which is like a letter saying how you're going to care for the child? We're like, yes. So we did all that as fast as we could, and we finished the process. And of course we felt bad for the family that couldn't adopt her, and we prayed for them. But we just felt like, okay, this is God. God brought her back up. And we knew instantly when she was brought back up, she was our daughter. I don't know, it just, we both have had that experience. And we had to do courses and different things to continue the adoption process. So we did courses, and we had a home study, and we were able to get the home study done pretty quickly. Because the lady that did our home study lived in China at that time. And it was pretty easy. We had heard some stories about others having some issues with their home study. So we did everything that they had recommended, so it worked out. And so then, about 2 years later, after everything was done, that's with background checks and all kinds of stuff, we got the okay to go get Lola, and we traveled to Xi'an to get her with our 2 children. And a lot of people choose to do some sightseeing before they go ahead and get the child. But my husband and I had been to Xi'an a couple years before that, and we already had seen all the sights, so we chose to just get our girl right away. And come here, stand up. There she is. They're done with their book, so they're gonna do their activities. So we got in on a Friday night, and the next day they called us and said she's gonna be at your hotel at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we waited around, did some fun things around the hotel, and at about 3:30 we decided to go down to the lobby of the hotel, and we were just hanging out. We'd also brought along a friend to do some filming and take some pictures for us of the whole process. And my husband said, "There's Lola." And we all like, "Where?" And she's standing there with her ayi, which is a caregiver or auntie in Chinese. And there she was singing a song with her. It's just so cute. And we walked over to her, and the coordinator lady the Chinese lady that was there to help us do more paperwork and get some pictures made and things like that, saw us walking towards her, and she said, "Oh, is that the little girl?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's her." So we walk over there and we introduce ourselves as her family. And then we were able to have some alone time to talk with the caregiver that was there for a little while. And then we had to hop in the car to go get some pictures made for a piece of paper being noticed, just the adoption paper.
And when we were going with her, we gave her a little album, and it had a bunch of pictures of our family.
Yeah, we did. That was one of the things that people recommended, the snacks and just different things that she can call her own, because more than likely she had nothing of her own but the clothes on her back. And so we did that, and then after that we were left alone. Then the next day they picked us up to do some more paperwork, and sadly she was abandoned when she was a baby, so sadly we have a certificate of abandonment, which was, yeah, it's just a hard thing to know that your child has that, but she has her forever home now. And because she's being silly.
Which one is you? I'm gonna put let's go red, orange, yellow, purple. And this is yellow.
You don't need to change your clothes. It's not dirty, is it?
Huh?
Let's go this way.
Now I'm gonna put on red.
person, what have you had to do to be able to work with your environment? What do you need every day for most things you do in life?
I do.
You do not know. A stool, right?
Yes. If I go to school, I need it.
How do you brush your teeth? A stool?
It's a stool.
Yeah. How do you wash your hands?
It's a stool.
Yeah.
I need some things that are hard with a stool because things that I can just